The Center on Wrongful Convictions of Youth is the latest project from Northwestern University School of Law's Bluhm Legal Clinic. It is the first innocence project in the country dedicated to rectifying the wrongful conviction of young people.
Sort of the germination of the idea for this center came about 10 or 15 years ago when I was doing primarily juvenile justice related work representing children charged with crimes in juvenile and adult court. And I got involved in a case involving a young boy who was 11 years old when he was charged with murdering his neighbor, an 83-year-old woman. And the only evidence against him was a confession. And he told me, I said I did it, but I didn't do it. And that began for me, a more than decades-long search to try to understand why children are more vulnerable to confessing the crimes they didn't commit than adults.
What we now know, due in large part to the work of Professor Drizin here at the Children and Family Justice Center, is that children, youth, adolescents falsely confess to police under certain circumstances of interrogations, which are typical circumstances of interrogations across the United States.
Back in the late 1990s, when I was beginning to collect information about this, the Anthony Harris case from New Philadelphia, Ohio, came on my radar screen. And I began to study that case, and it's a classic case of a juvenile false confession that led to a juvenile court wrongful conviction. Here's a 12-year-old boy, never been in trouble with the law before, who was brought into a police station and is subjected to an interrogation by a seasoned chief of police.
Anything you say can be against you in court of law. Understand that?
I heard the tape of that interrogation and I was blown away, because in less than an hour, using standard psychological techniques, this investigator had gotten Anthony to admit to murdering his 5-year-old neighbor, a crime that it later turned out he was exonerated of. The Anthony Harris case is typical of all of the cases involving false confessions and juveniles. And it's typical because it's a case where a child is being interrogated by a police officer outside the presence of a parent or an adult guardian, and you can see just how overmatched 12-year-old Anthony was.
And you stabbed her in the throat, didn't you? Anthony? You did, didn't you? Anthony, yes. Do you know how many times you stabbed her?
But once he waived his Miranda warnings, it was clear to me that he was willing to say almost anything that his interrogator wanted him to say in order to get out of that interrogation room, in order to get back with his mom.
Sure can. Why don't you wait here and we go here?
I didn't do it, but you didn't do it. No. Then why did you tell them that you did? That's good. I get upset because I couldn't protect my son. Okay? I could not protect my son.
I can't tell you how many times I've seen that story play out, where a child, once reunited with a parent, breaks down and tries to explain what just happened. It's a double tragedy. You have the child who confesses to a crime he didn't commit, and then you have the parent who is scarred from allowing their child to be exposed to what turned out to be a coercive interrogation.
The evidence used against kids every day in juvenile court and in adult court is faulty, unreliable. It therefore means, if we think deeply at all about the innocence movement and what we've learned in the last 10 years, that the system is broken. The justice system has a profound flaw at its heart. We have a choice here based on what we now know. We can do nothing, which is to say let a handful of lawyers clean up cases of people who've wrongfully served 10, 20, 30 years in prison for a crime they didn't commit. Or we can act now and change the procedures by which we extract evidence, get confessions, do trials, and exclude unreliable evidence. We think that we should act now.
People should be invested in this. They should care about this because, of course, every time that you arrest or charge the wrong person with a crime, that means that the right person, the true perpetrator, the murderer, the rapist, is out on the streets, free to commit the same crimes. So from a public safety perspective, people need to care about it. But from just simply a basic human perspective, we should care about how our children are being treated by law enforcement officers. And in every other sphere of life, we recognize that children require greater protection than adults. They need to get that same greater protection when they're a suspect in a crime or a witness to a crime.